Hello, hello, hello. How are we doing? Thank you for coming out tonight and welcome to DesignFix Symposium, Is Democracy in a State of Emergency? It's a ridiculously dramatic title, but we're all here, so it worked. I would like to thank our panel for coming out here and thank the Science Gallery for hosting. This is part of the In Case of Emergency exhibition, and we're happy and proud that they saw the coordination between our event and I guess what we're working on and what they've been working on. And if you haven't seen that exhibition yet, I would recommend getting out and having a walk around. Some of the exhibitions are very interesting. So, my name is John Buckley. I work at Frontend.com. If you don't know the company, we are a design consultancy based right around the corner here. We work commercially on user experience design, so we design products or services from the point of view of human-centered design. So what we do is we try and understand people's needs and map to that solutions for them. We also run this DesignFix program, which is a social needs program. And so what that is basically it's a means for us to explore projects we otherwise wouldn't get to explore, and also connect with students and colleges as we do it. So this year we have been focused a little bit more on, last year we worked with the UN in terms of trying to shape mobile migration and the healthcare provisions for those. And this year we looked a lot more around anti-government populism and the effects that we've kind of been seeing manifest in both Europe and America and elsewhere. So, oh, that's my slide. Okay, there we are, introducing rules of engagement. So one of the things we've done is produce a white paper, which essentially is a bunch of design principles for civic dialogue in this new era that we're in. Now, while we joke a lot about government, this imagery I think feels probably familiar to a lot of people. And this negative sentiment, while humorous, may actually be quite damaging. This negative narrative becomes a negative sentiment and really reflects the lack of trust and faith that a lot of us have in democracy and in government. And actually, this chart here is really, you probably can't see it, but if you look at this, this is the trust by profession. The very last two professions are government ministers and politicians generally. So that's unsustainably low for a body which really only exists based upon our trust. And this change is kind of decades old, but it's more recently driven, I guess, accelerated, driven by changes in media patterns from the advent of 24-hour news cycles. Now we're looking at digital media, and I guess how politicians have responded to those changes. So that, I guess, is the background, but more recently we look at technological changes which have contributed to a massive change. Millennials in particular are very disconnected from their public institutions and representatives, not because those representatives are more distant, but actually because, I guess, their environment has changed and expectations have changed. So we're used to being able to tweet at a multinational corporation and getting a reply back. You know, we're familiar with this idea of tapping a button and getting toilet paper, or tapping a button and getting a pizza. And so while governments haven't actually changed too much, the disconnect because of the change in our environment feels massive. And that's not good for anyone, especially, I guess, this kind of this relationship between citizens and government. And the disconnect leaves people feeling disillusioned, and more recently we've seen very strange patterns emerge. So Donald Trump has been, I guess, one of those very obvious, interesting use cases or situations. And what he's doing is actually he's kind of rolling back a lot of hard-fought wins that I guess society in general have put together. And what we see, and that's kind of unusual in this situation, is that people who are almost most disenfranchised are the most at risk of his policies are actually most in favor of Donald Trump, or his most passionate supporters. And who would have thought that, you know, less than 100 years after the Irish fought and won independence from the British, that the British would fight for and win independence from us? You know, so it's a strange world that we're living in right now. So as part of this collaboration, we worked with master's level design students, many of which I can see here in the audience today, to explore this disenfranchisement. We worked with them from NCAD, the University of Limerick, and IADT Dún Laoghaire. And actually, as part of their courses, they explored these symptoms of this situation and the needs of citizens. Some of them looked at government, others looked at jobs, others looked at security for the farms, and various different aspects of the problems out there. And we chose 8 students to come to work with us in Frontend for a near week-long intensive boot camp, where they interacted with public consultation experts, policy experts, AI technicians, the guys from Storyful, and others, to gain a better insight and, I guess, create some broad design thinking around this issue. And after that, the guys at Frontend, we kind of converged that thinking into something a little bit more cohesive. Throughout this process, a number of things became evident to us. One is that many people do not feel connected to government, and those who are most dependent on it are actually feel most fearful. And governments are working really hard to actually bring citizens into the process. That's something we didn't know. But in many countries, there's still no clear way of communicating. In a lot of cases, you're left to campaigning or protesting, basically to cause enough disruption to have your voices heard. And so that's not a good form of communication. We've also learned there's an information deficit. So civic literacy, or how much you know about how government operates, is on the rise, or is on the decline. People are less likely to know. And media is more focused on political maneuvering than it is on, I guess, the policies that are coming out. And Leo Varadkar's, we've seen a little bit of this now. Leo Varadkar launched the Strategic Communications Unit 2 weeks ago or so. And so that's acknowledging that the problem is communications a little bit. But actually what they've done there is they've looked at top-down communications, the same issues that we're having, and looking at distributing information through mass media, which is the same policies that we've always had. What we're arguing is that governments need to think about bypassing the media in certain situations and opening direct communication from citizens to government, and government to citizens back. So I mentioned a moment ago that governments around the world are already looking at this, and we have this partnership called the Open Government Partnership. The governments actually are right now meeting in The Hague, basically exploring trust in government at their annual meeting at the Open Government Partnership. And what this partnership is about is 3 aspects. One is opening government data, the other is being more transparent in their processes, and the final is encouraging citizen participation. So we've seen the Irish government roll this out in things like the Citizens' Assembly and in other initiatives. So what we're talking about isn't essentially a new idea. But what we're here today is to launch this report, this white paper, which myself and the team at Frontend have been working really hard to try and, I guess, craft a lot of the thinking that's going on in Open Government Partnership and bring that together with design thinking and all the other aspects. So what we're looking at here is using design tools to open direct dialogue, to avoid the lack of communication, and using digital tools to open those conversations. The paper argues that government-initiated dialogue, such as public consultations, really just aren't enough. They're good for, I guess, impacting on legislation, but in terms of the journey, citizens need to feel more empowered, and so they engaging themselves on the citizen-initiated engagements would have a lot of way there. And we also argue that this could be a vehicle for dialogue both ways, that governments could communicate backwards as well. And so the paper is broken into 3 core principles, essentially. It's instinctive, that basically people should be able to pick up their phone and communicate with government as opposed to doing so on Facebook. It's constructive, so actually representatives should be able to hear those. And that's a major issue right now, is that representatives are not able to hear because there's so much information coming at them. And with these open government principles, we're going to have more people contributing to the debate, and so I guess more noise for representatives. And then reassuring. This is where we could actually use these channels to increase civic literacy and increase information that is going back out. So using the channel not just for one-way dialogue from the citizen, but actually sending information back to citizens through these one-on-one channels. The design principles listed here are based off our field research, but also from best practice in the field. And they're immediate, inclusive, representative, meaningful, informative, and transparent. We go through it in great detail in the paper, so I'll kind of move on from this here. But actually, what we've seen is there's lots of really great examples of how bringing people into the process can build their trust and can actually get them, from paying more taxes in countries where tax collection is an issue, to being more trusting in government. And we've run our own pilot studies with Cork County Council to find that actually people who receive information back from government on initiatives that they've started have a much greater sense of purpose, even outside of that relationship in their kind of society. One of the parts of this has been actually a design concept, taking the principles of the paper and I guess realizing them. So this is, I guess, something where we want to kind of, the principles are essentially owner agnostic, so it could be government or businesses, and also they're channel agnostic. So in this design concept, and I'll show a quick video now, we look at iMessaging, but also it could be email or it could be other channels of engaging. But this video that we have right here is I guess, one example or one means of communicating. And in this instance, we take it as a government tool. So we'll just play this here. DesignFix is a social needs program where we bring students together with professional designers to look at some of the world's biggest societal issues and I guess try and see how design thinking and human-centered design can solve them. Right now, we're thinking a lot about our society and the obvious disillusionment with government.
This year, we asked ourselves the question, how might we reduce the gap between the citizens and the government and bring a sense of ownership back to the people? So working with universities and policy think tanks from around the world, we've been looking at how governments and organisations might create a cultural shift away from lobbying and towards a more constructive and direct dialogue.
The user experience is the user experience of anything. Could be a service, could be an object. It's a relationship between you and something. And I think that the relationship between governments and people can be improved by a better user experience.
So what we're doing is mainly focused on the idea of building trust again, using technology, but not only technology, more the idea of social capital and how groups can spread and build.
Currently, there are a lot of really ineffective ways of communicating with government, such as protesting, creating online campaigns, spamming representatives' inboxes, and generally these don't lead anywhere and they can create a lot of noise for representatives, as well as increasing disillusionment among citizens.
So we've been thinking about how to engage disaffected citizens, but for any solution to work, it needs to reach them on the channels they're familiar with. So we prototyped a conversational UI powered by machine learning, which helps group and articulate the issues that users and citizens might be interested in. It can also be a vehicle to help citizens understand and contextualize what might be polarized views.
The system reduces unnecessary noise for the public representative by answering questions where it can. And where a human response is more appropriate, messages can be aggregated or grouped with others that convey the same intent. These messages are then served up to the representative to give an overview of what their constituents are saying, and they can actually reply to those groups or individuals to host meaningful conversations on the platform.
A public view is also available so citizens can see what the representatives are hearing and be assured of full transparency. So the key to this system is the feedback loop, which allows citizens to see if there's been any development on their issue or whether it's been mentioned in Parliament or in legislation.
So
So we conducted a pilot study with the Cork County Council, which is in the south of Ireland, to test the concept. And what we found when they rolled out a clear communication channel, they had a huge increase in the number of citizens engaging with them. And those citizens who did engage and received a feedback were far more positive in terms of their view on the council and felt they had more of an impact in society in general.
So what we've proposed here doesn't solve populism, nor does it improve trust or services, and it doesn't make our societies more equal.
However, making it easy to communicate and demonstrating the impact of that communication essentially are the foundation blocks to something much greater. We hope that this collaboration inspires governments and organisations to rise to the challenge of being more transparent and more responsive to the citizens they serve.
All right. So that is the MOOC concept. Thank you. That is the MOOC concept, and this is the white paper. The white paper is intended, I guess, as a reference document for anybody looking at trust in government or trust in society, particularly through participatory democracy. We always trip over on that. There's contributions from thought leaders across the world, some of which are here to answer some questions. And that MOOC concept that you just saw has actually just been nominated for a major worldwide award, global award at the IXDA Interaction Design. It's been shortlisted for that, so that's very exciting. And we've been kind of trying this out a lot with governments, both here in Ireland and also abroad. And so there's been a lot of really positive feedback on the initiatives and the principles outlined within the paper. So if this is anything of interest to you, I would ask you to look at that web address, Frontend.com/engage, where you can learn more about the project and actually look at the white paper itself.